Martin Luther King's story of hope, growth mindset lesson. On an ordinary afternoon in the United States during the 1950s, a bus rolled slowly through the streets of Montgomery, Alabama. People stepped on and off, some sitting at the front, others pushed to the back. The rules of separation were everywhere, in schools, restaurants, even and in the water fountains on the corner. For many, it was simply the way life looked. But for a young minister named Martin Luther King Jr., it was a wound on the nation's soul. He walked with quiet determination, carrying not just sermons, but a vision, an unshakable belief that dignity belonged to every human being. Imagine him in those early days, speaking to a small group inside a simple church hall. His words were steady, his tone filled with both urgency and compassion. He told them that change would not come overnight, but step by step, with courage and persistence. People listened, weary from long days of labor, but something in his voice lit a spark. This is where our story begins, and it is also where we welcome you today. You are listening to Learn English Listening, and I am Lydia, your guide through stories that not only teach language, but also inspire the heart. As we walk together through the journey of Martin Luther King Jr., we will discover not only history, but also lessons that touch our daily lives. Before we move forward, I would love to ask, what part of the world are you in as you hear this story? Your answer connects you to a community of listeners spread across the globe, each learning, reflecting, and growing together. What made his presence unforgettable was not the volume of his voice, but the calm conviction that tomorrow could be different from today. Those who heard him often said they left with lighter steps, as if carrying a small flame inside. That flame spread quietly, one person to another, long before the world would know his name. The life of Martin Luther King Jr. was not wrapped in comfort. At only 26 years old, he was asked to lead a movement that would shake the foundations of a divided society. He faced nights when the phone rang with threats, mornings when he walked into courtrooms as a prisoner rather than a free man, and days when his family lived under constant pressure. For most people in their late 20s or 30s, the challenge is balancing career, paying bills, or raising children. For him, the weight was carrying the hope of millions. And yet, his struggles echo the ones many feel today, though in different shapes. You may wake up and feel trapped in a job that drains you, or stretched thin between deadlines and caring for your family. Sometimes, the invisible pressure of comparison makes you believe you are falling behind. Martin knew that feeling of being pressed from all sides. He once wrote from a jail cell that waiting too long for justice is itself a form of denial. That truth translates into our daily lives. Postponing our own growth, waiting for the right time, can quietly steal our future. When he chose nonviolence, it was not because it was easy. It was because anger would have destroyed the dream. He taught that dignity is not only a political stance, but also a personal one. How you hold yourself when the world misunderstands you. How you rise when everything in you wants to collapse. I wonder about you. Do you sometimes feel like life is moving faster than you can catch up? If you do, you are not alone. Martin's story shows us that even in the rush and the noise, one person can anchor themselves in purpose and inspire others to keep going. There were nights when he admitted to feeling exhausted, moments when despair knocked at his door. Yet even then, he chose to stand up and face another day. His honesty about fear made him more human, not less. In that vulnerability, people saw their own struggles reflected, and they found the courage to continue walking beside him. Every great movement hides a secret code, a key that unlocks why people follow and why change becomes unstoppable. For Martin Luther King Jr., that hidden key was vision, seeing beyond the broken present into a future that did not yet exist. When crowds marched, they were not only walking for civil rights, they were stepping into an imagined tomorrow he painted with his words. One phrase he carried became legendary: "I have a dream." Simple, direct, but powerful enough to echo through generations. When you repeat these words, notice how they carry hope. In English, the phrase also reminds us that speaking a dream out loud gives it strength. Saying it is the first step toward building it. Another phrase tied closely to his journey is one step at a time. Imagine walking through a storm, unable to see the finish line. You focus on the next step, then the next. That is how progress is built, not in leaps, but in steady movement forward. In your English practice, the same applies. One new word today, one sentence tomorrow, and suddenly you find yourself speaking with confidence. The third phrase is, I'm still learning. Even leaders who stand on stages and guide nations admit they are not finished. For you, this phrase can be a shield against fear. Instead of saying, I'm not good enough, you can say, I'm still learning. It turns weakness into growth. Hidden keys like these are not locked in history. They are here for anyone who chooses to pick them up. Martin unlocked change by believing in the dream, walking one step at a time, and reminding himself and the world that he was still learning. These are not just words. They are tools we can carry in our own hands today. These phrases were not polished slogans. They were lived truths. Each time he spoke them, he breathed new energy into a weary crowd. They were reminders that greatness is not reserved for the extraordinary, but is built through ordinary people choosing to believe. When practiced daily, they become anchors in both language and life. The summer of 1963 brought a turning point. On a bright day in Washington, D.C., more than 200,000 people filled the National Mall. They stood shoulder to shoulder, some holding signs, others holding hands, all waiting for a voice that could carry their hopes. When Martin Luther King Jr. stepped onto the stage, the crowd fell into silence. His words did not simply describe injustice. They painted a vision of freedom so vivid that listeners could almost touch it. He spoke of children playing together without barriers, of communities where justice flowed like a river, of a nation transformed by compassion. As he repeated the phrase, I have a dream, the crowd erupted in waves of applause. Those 4 words rose into the sky, bouncing off the monuments, embedding themselves in history. But the climax of his journey was not only in the applause. It was in the courage to keep speaking even when danger surrounded him. Every march was shadowed by the threat of violence. Every speech carried the risk of arrest. Yet he pressed forward because silence would have meant surrender. Think of moments in your own life when fear tried to silence you. Maybe it was in a meeting where your idea felt too small to share, or in a conversation where your truth felt too heavy to speak. Martin's courage reminds us that transformation always comes with risk, but the reward is worth it. A life lived in alignment with your deepest values. And so I ask you, if tomorrow gave you a fresh start, what would you do differently? His legacy challenges us not only to dream, but to act, even when uncertainty is great. For those who stood there that day, the memory never faded. Many later recalled that it felt as though time stopped, as if they were witnessing a vision larger than themselves. Years mixed with applause, and strangers held hands without hesitation. It was not just a speech, it was a shared heartbeat, uniting thousands in one powerful moment. When a seed is pressed deep into the soil, it seems buried, forgotten, even lost. Yet within that darkness, something sacred happens. Roots begin to form. The life of Martin Luther King Jr. reflects this same truth. His journey was full of storms, but those storms became the very rain that nourished the dream. Think of a garden after heavy weather. At first glance, leaves are torn, soil is scattered, branches bend low. But beneath the surface, the roots hold strong, and with time, new shoots appear. Martin's vision was like that, tested, battered, but never uprooted. His courage gave people permission to believe that justice was not just an idea, but a living seed that could grow in any season. For us, healing comes when we shift the way we see struggle. A setback does not mean the story is over. It can be the very place where strength begins. Just as a broken branch can redirect sunlight to smaller plants below, our pain can open paths for others to rise. So when you feel overwhelmed, imagine yourself as part of that same garden. You are not defined by the storm you face, but by the roots you choose to deepen. The dream of freedom and dignity continues not because the world is perfect, but because ordinary people keep planting hope in rough soil. Just as gardens bloom again after winter, communities can find renewal after seasons of struggle. Martin's legacy whispers that resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about transforming it into fertile ground. Each challenge can be compost for future growth, turning what once felt heavy into nourishment for dreams yet to come. As our journey with Martin Luther King Jr. draws to a close, picture a crossroad stretching before you. On one side lies comfort, the familiar routines, the safety of staying silent, the choice to drift with the current. On the other side lies growth, the challenge of speaking your truth, the courage to act even when the outcome is uncertain, the commitment to a life shaped by vision rather than fear. Martin stood at that crossroad many times. Each time, he chose growth. He chose to lift his voice when silence was easier. He chose to walk forward when retreat was safer. His choices remind us that history is not only made by speeches or marches, but by small daily decisions repeated with faith. Now the question turns to you. At this moment, you stand between comfort and growth. Which path will you take? The answer may not change a nation overnight, but it will shape your life and perhaps inspire someone near you to take their own step forward. If this story offered you something meaningful, share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And subscribe to Learn English Listening so that together we can keep walking the road of language, courage, and self-growth, one step at a time.